Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Band Rants channel, your home for NFL projections, predictions, and of course, your periodic rant. And in this video, I'm going to be going over some claims for the 2021 postseason. Now, this is not just limited to wins and losses, this is also a few behind the scenes things as well. But before I get into all of that, I'm going to talk about the playoff picture, I'm going to talk about some behind the scenes things. But before I do, please make sure if you're new to the channel, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and start. So these are the current standings and projected playoff matches. Of course, the ESPN playoff machine is available in these last couple of weeks. The first claim I want to make is that provided they don't play each other in the wild card round, Joe Burrow and Mac Jones will both win a playoff game, which would be pretty historic for one and pretty interesting for another. So the Bengals haven't won a playoff game since 1990. We know this. And the Patriots, of course, people think that 2 years out of the playoffs is not long, but for Patriots fans, it feels like an eternity. And Mac Jones getting his first victory ever as a rookie quarterback in the postseason, and more importantly, in his first playoff match ever, would be pretty cool. And it would be nice to see a Joe Burrow, Mac Jones dream match in the first round, but if we don't see that, I think that both of them are going to get a win. Now, the way that happens, obviously, it's a little tricky right now. You'd have to have Buffalo and the Colts both win out. Obviously, New England wins out. The Chiefs would probably beat Cincinnati. I've already got that projected. Then Cincinnati wins in Week 17. The Bills and Patriots, like I said before, they win out, as do the Colts. And that would be your matchup. Now, don't worry about the 7th seed. I'm going to cover that in a moment. And you could also potentially see Tennessee drop, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Tennessee also would, win out. I'll just finish the playoff picture there. Tennessee winning out. But regardless of that, I don't know who the 7th seed is going to be, but I'm going to cover that in a minute. You'd see New England and Buffalo, of course, in the third time this year, and you'd see Indianapolis and Cincinnati, which would be a really fun match. I'm not going to lie. You see Jonathan Taylor, an MVP candidate, and then Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati Bengals' first home playoff game since, I believe, 2015. But either way, that would be the best scenario to have both quarterbacks win their first matchup. And I do think it's possible. Now, speaking of the 7th seed, my second prediction, if I clear all this, is that the Miami Dolphins, who are currently sitting at the 7th seed, that they're going to lose out and they're going to miss on the postseason. Now, we're not going to go too crazy. I'm just going to kind of go through the AFC, really quickly. Like I said before, the Bengals and the Bengals will probably lose round 1. The Bills and Patriots probably will win, and the Titans, I do believe, would beat the Dolphins regardless of that lose-out scenario. Indianapolis would probably win against the Colts, the Raiders. Excuse me, they are the Colts. Houston will probably lose. The Chargers will probably win. Baltimore against the Rams, I just don't think so. But then Week 18 is where things get really, really, really interesting. Also, the Steelers would probably win against the Cleveland Browns as well. Week 18, we know that the Chargers would probably be in control of their own destiny. The Ravens would probably win against the Steelers because at that point they're probably just playing for spoilers at that point. And they would finish off 9 wins and 8 losses and be on the outside looking in. But if the Raiders are able to actually beat the Chargers, that's where things get interesting. Kansas City would probably win out because the Titans would also be projected to win out. Cincinnati would win, Bills would win, New England would win against the Dolphins, Colts would win against the Jags, like I've already predicted that. But then, of course, you'd have the Chargers, which we can't see that matchup unless I can't get it, so we can't see that matchup. But either way, the Dolphins would actually miss the postseason, and either the Chargers, you could argue the Ravens could maybe make it interesting if Lamar Jackson comes back, but I doubt it. I feel like the Chargers or possibly the Raiders could make that leap into the 7 seed, and the Dolphins are not projected to win out at all, so I don't think they will. But there's really not a lot to choose from after that. I think the 7 seed, no matter who gets it, probably doesn't deserve it. Now, The third projection I want to make is more of a behind-the-scenes one. You have a lot of head coach openings last year. I think you're going to have at least 6 this year, including one of those openings being taken by a former head coach. We know Jacksonville has already requested interviews with Jim Caldwell and Doug Peterson, and you could see other teams follow suit, especially with the Rooney Rule. You could see, coaches like Marvin Lewis or Jim Caldwell requested. That's what happened last year. And I think that actually one of them probably will go after a former head coach. Now, we know Dan Quinn actually rejected an interview with Jacksonville, the former Falcons head coach, now the Cowboys defensive coordinator. And we did see a former head coach recently, Mike McCarthy, going to Dallas 2 years ago. So it's not exactly unreasonable to expect something like this to happen. Even Bruce Arians is in Tampa right now. So realistically, there's no scenario that this couldn't happen, and I think at least one team is going to have one. Now, the 6 openings you could probably see, the Raiders and Jags are already open. I think the Vikings open up. I think the Bears are going to open up. Carolina could be another team to watch as well. And granted, if the Giants were smart, they'd have the back coach openings as well, because Joe Judge is absolutely awful, but they're not going to open it. And another team to watch that I really don't think it's smart, but probably will open up, is probably going to be Denver. And out of all of these, Denver's really the best one, with the exception of maybe the Raiders. But Denver, realistically, their head coach is not the problem. It's the fact that they haven't solved their quarterback issue, which is more of a front office problem than a Vic Fangio problem. But I digress. Those are the 6 openings you're probably going to see, and honestly, it should be 7, and it could be even more if they didn't have so many jobs filled last year, but that's what you're probably going to see this year, and it's going to be really interesting to see who gets brought over. You've heard coordinators from Tampa could be brought over. Indianapolis or Buffalo have some good coordinators, but we'll see what happens in the coaching market. It's going to be a good one. Now, the next prediction that I want to make is that Arizona and Buffalo are both going to lose in round 1 in the wild card round. Now, that's a bit bold in terms of Buffalo, because they have been getting a little bit better at this time of year, but Arizona has been the exact opposite. They've been such a disappointment. They're 3-5 in their last 8 games, and they're projected to lose again this week to Dallas. And DeAndre Hopkins not playing has really impacted this offense and made it almost like 1.5 dimensional. Now, getting Chase Edmonds back, did help a little bit, but Arizona, we know they're going to be playing in January in terms of the postseason, because they already clinched a berth thanks to some, record shifting losses in the NFC standings. But that's not saying much. They don't look like the strong team they looked like in September and October. They've actually, following suit of last year, they're choking a little bit in December, and it's really not looking good for that team as a whole. Now, Arizona's not a bad team. That's not what I mean. But they've actually regressed the most out of anyone in the current playoff standings. And that even includes teams like Baltimore, who has lost 4 straight. Teams like the Patriots, who have lost a couple recently. But either way, the Cardinals are probably in for trouble. And Buffalo as well. I think Buffalo just has not looked the same. Like, they've been getting better this time of year, but they haven't looked the same as they did last year. They don't have that burst on offense I feel like they have last year. I feel like it's in bits and pieces. And I don't think that they're going to actually win against any wild card team unless they're facing the 7 seed. Now, for that to happen, of course, they'd have to win out, have Tennessee, I think, lose out or something like that. But either way, not projected to happen. And right now, the wild card teams, with the exception of the 7 seed, look better than Buffalo. And I know that the Patriots just lost to them recently, but they've also beaten them in Buffalo, which is where Buffalo's first game is probably going to be in January in the wild card round. So don't expect Buffalo to really be as strong as they were last year in the postseason. That's one of my projections. And the next one that I want to do is the NFC Championship game. I actually think that that's going to be a rematch from last year of the Buccaneers and the Packers, provided they don't play each other in the divisional round. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. Realistically, I can see one of these wild card teams besides Arizona potentially winning out, and these standings can also change. I think Tampa could be in the top 3 instead of the 4 seed. And even if all 4 division winners, run the table and win in the wild card round, which is highly unlikely, I still think that Green Bay and Tampa are going to be in the NFC title picture again. But this time, I think the Packers are going to win. There's just too much speculation going on with Aaron Rodgers possibly being his last season in Green Bay and breaking Brett Favre's touchdown record for the franchise. There's too much speculation to ignore that Green Bay is probably going to do it this year. And I know he was the MVP last year, but you could argue the MVP curse that I've talked about in former videos got in the way. I don't think he'll have that this year. So with that being said, I think Green Bay would be a Super Bowl pick in terms of the NFC. But I also think it's going to be, at the very least, Packers and Bucks in the NFC title picture again. And finally, the last prediction that I want to do, and this one might come out of left field, but it actually has to do with the Philadelphia Eagles, that they're going to run the table and they're going to clinch a playoff berth that way. Now, that's probably going to piss off a lot of Cowboys fans, but either way, Dallas is finishing at like 12, possibly even 13 wins if they do end up running the table themselves, which I don't really know, but I still think Philadelphia has more to play for right now than Dallas does. I think Green Bay is going to win out and clinch home field advantage. So at that point, all Dallas would be doing is playing for seeding, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it also makes no difference because you'll still be playing in round 1. Philadelphia, on the other hand, is fighting for their life. So you could see them win out pretty easily, as a matter of fact. I think Philadelphia wins in Washington. I think they also are probably going to play very well, especially in Philly, against Dallas, which is a big rivalry. I think they can actually win that game, and it would affect the seedings. And that's probably how you'd end up seeing Tampa and the Packers end up playing in that NFC Championship picture. Even if you do see Dallas and the Rams, Dallas and Green Bay in round 2 and Tampa and the Rams in round 2, that's probably how it's going to happen. But those are the predictions that I have. In addition to that, if I have to make a prediction from one of my former assessments of which team would probably take the former head coach, I'm actually going to go with the Jaguars to do that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys not only in the next video, but in the next year.